like I said, projected divorce or something, what I recommend for him is like get the prenup and yeah. So let's move on to another video. Um, this is different. Banks own everything and you have nothing. Haven't watched this guy in a while. Gerbert Voigt, really good YouTuber. I recommend definitely watching him. He's obviously a Zoomer, Gen Z. Recently, kind of like okay, seeing the trend of okay, looks, Maxi, Red Bull, and all that stuff, but he kind of analyzes, break it down to a more intellectual level. So let's watch him.
Yes! I'm back from the dead. Last video took off the air in real time. I was taking some liberties with some of the jokes. I would hate to send the wrong message, okay? If people take the wrong message as hate speech, oh, it's so awful. So I'm deeply sorrowful for my mistakes. The last the last time I felt this bad was probably when I was watching the towers fall. No, but all the removed videos are on Patreon. There's other stuff there too. Also, they're on Spotify. Some of
Yeah,
them.
his channels, his videos keep taken down. I don't know why, but makes sense.
A good amount of them. The recent one is, and that's free if you have Spotify, so that's cool. Anyways, I had to hop back on here to go off about something. 50-year mortgages. Well. That seems kind of, look, I'm a young guy, so maybe my perspective is a little bit skewed, but that seems like kind of a long ass time. Let's let Daddy break this down for a second. When people say Gen Z can't buy houses, millennials can't buy houses, what they really mean is that they can't afford to enter into a 30-year mortgage. Of course,
The real reason houses go up is an asset. It goes up in value. It's like the stock market, it goes up in value. Um, there's definitely memes out there where back in 1900s, a house cost about 30,000. Now it costs about 400,000. You know, even though like yeah, it's a joke, it's actually real. Um, I mean like you would have to be really successful too, and that's what he says. It's like you have to be really successful. You have to be smart with your money. You can't save your money for like the long term because it of course loses value because of inflation. It's best to put it in asset like stock market, and I feel like young people still own stocks. I own stock myself, and I've been definitely like I said getting a greater amount of return, average 10%. So
no one's buying a house cash. No one's got $500,000 cash. Oh, here you go. I'll take one house, please. No, you got to enter into a mortgage. What happens in a mortgage? You go to a bank. You put down 20% is standard. So if you're buying a $500,000 house, you need to have $100,000 to put down immediately. Or it could be lower.
it's like Shark Tank. You put an investment in equity, or you put a royalty.
It could be 10%, 5%. The rest of the money the bank has to loan you at interest. The current rate would be around 6.5%. And for the next 30 years, every month, you make a payment. 30 years later, after making these monthly payments, you could own that house that you got the mortgage for. Yippee! Doesn't sound like too bad of a deal. You get the house now, but you pay it off over a long time. I don't have all that money right now. What am I supposed to do? But if you'd read the fine print of this document, what you'd find is that the 6.5 interest rate, it's a little misleading because it comes.
It's almost like cars where you have to, of course, if you can't afford, you can't pay it off in full. Um, of course, if you can't pay it off in full, you would have to put down down payment, and then of course they would give you. I wouldn't. For me, I never experienced that, thank God. But like I said, because you're kind of putting that very bad situation in a car because everything's drivable nowadays. Like he said, the car loses value, so I feel like you'll probably end up paying more if you plan to sell it. It's slow, so
Compounds over these 30 years. So the total interest percentage or tip will usually be well over 100%, meaning that over the course of this 30 years, you end up paying twice the amount of what this house is worth. If you buy a $500,000 house in a 30-year mortgage, over the course of the 30 years, you're paying over $1 million. And the difference in that money, the remainder, that goes all straight to Mr. McFlanagan, the owner of the bank. Now, this, of course, was a corrupt system. You don't win with it. To charge interest on top of interest is morally reprehensible and ought to be criminal. But for a while it works okay. You get the 30-year mortgage, people are entering it, they're buying the houses. Not anymore with the young people. So here's what we got to do. The great leaders of our nation came up with something ingenious. Now after the down payment, those monthly payments are going to be way lower because it's over 50 years. So you're just chilling. You get the house. The monthly payments are so low, you can order Wingstop, just chill with the homies, bro. Just like jack off in your house. It's so like that sounds fucking sick. And playing games and just like chilling for you could just chill with your fat wife in the house, watching the game, going to work, coming home, relaxing. It's the American dream, baby. Of course, over this 50 years, you read the fine print, the total interest percentage is even higher. Something crazy. You're going to end up paying $500,000 more than you would have with the 30-year mortgage over those 50 years. I mean, wow, that's a lot of bread. I'm at the tip.
yeah, because like not only that, inflation goes up, so your cost of living goes up too. Um, it's like of course like I don't want to deal with that stress honestly. Like I mean I'd rather like pay it off everything in full. Last resort would be just to build a house, like go back Minecraft style.
Top of the rap game. I've escaped the hood. I have all these accolades. I sip and drank. All these bitches want my wiener, but I would have a hard time purchasing something like that. Let's get serious. Let's get a little technical here. That's actually not the bank's game to get you to enter a 50-year mortgage and stick it out the entire 50 years. Of course, that would be good for them, but that's not really the strategy. People move 12 times throughout their life. They move every like 5 years. Banks know this. So what then is the rationale behind extending this loan period from 30 to 50 years, besides helping the hardworking people of America, of course, which is the number one priority of international finance? But the other rationale has to do with the allocation, the ratio of your monthly payments in a 30-year mortgage or in a hypothetical 50-year mortgage. Every month when you make your mortgage payments, they are allocated to two different things. The principal loan that the bank gave you, and the second is the interest. And it's not like for every month you're paying 50% interest, 50% principal. How much of your monthly payment money goes into the interest or goes into the principal loan is determined by an amortization table. If you look at an amortization table for a 30-year mortgage, what you would see is the interest payments are very front-loaded. The first 5 years, you're actually paying most of the interest, which goes straight to the bank. So you're not building equity in the house. See, they're not really relying on you staying in that house 30 years to let the interest cook. That would work for them.
I feel like the house wouldn't be considered an asset if you're having to pay it every month because let's say if you pay the house off, now you have an asset that goes up. You don't have to give the banks like the money because you just paid everything off. But like I said, if you're still in that state of paying every month, they have the ability to change the interest rate and then they would profit off of that interest. So
they would win.
Because and in the end, like the value goes up, so you're in that constant cycle, and then you're most likely gonna be house poor, and you're most likely gonna be in debt. I mean, like, I understand, like, hey, we don't, of course we didn't learn this in school. I feel like if we learn this in school, then we better be more prepared. But like I said, the internet is out there to help.
There, but they win either way because the interest payments are all in the first 5 years, and they're betting on you moving within that time period or not long after that. And that is a pretty solid bet to make in today's world. People are always moving. There's jobs everywhere. Companies span the entire country and beyond. So people have to move, people have to relocate. But it would seem that people were still generating a decent amount of equity, not giving all of their money to the banks. So what is needed? A 50-year mortgage. Within a 50-year mortgage, the amortization schedule will be such that you'd have to stay in that bitch for 20 years to build any substantial amount of equity. Basically, all of your payments are going almost entirely towards interest directly to the bank, not towards the principal loan, which will actually lead to you owning the house. So you see the game now. You enter into a 50-year mortgage. It's a long time before you build any substantial equity in that house. Chances are you're going to move before that happens. Even if you do stay, the bank still wins. The interest cooks longer, and you get a very large chunk of money siphoned away from you over time by the compound interest. So you see how you're just getting further and further.
I mean, that's why my parents like planning to move, like, Philippines, just to buy property there. Because if they plan to buy a house there, the dollar value is way more valuable there. Or the currency in the Philippines is way more valuable than the dollar currency.
Away.
I mean, like, you would have to like move, um, probably Southeast Asian, or like somewhere where their currency is like very valued more.
From
Still has
owning
value.
something. If you get a 50-year mortgage, you're further away from owning that house than someone who's actually homeless, than someone who doesn't have any house. And you can go, well, previous mortgage terms are still available. If the 50-year launches, the 30-year is still going to be available. A 15-year, 5-year. Here's the problem. Once this convenient new technology is introduced, more people are going to buy houses. You can't underestimate the amount of people here just walking around. They have been whittled down to non-sentience. You give them a piece of paper. It says you own the house. They'll sign the shit. Doesn't matter how bad of an idea a 50-year mortgage is if you do the arithmetic. The compound interest, total interest, no, they're just going to sign that hoe to get them and their fat wife in a house with a couch and a TV. And what?
That's why those agreements is like they don't play. Like when they're given that paper, they just sign it right away. They don't even read it. And like in my head, I'm like, should you read it? I mean, it looks like it's a very long ass paper. People don't have the time to like, read it, and so they just sign it instead. And I feel like, hey, there may be way more important parts, and then all of a sudden, something would be wrong, and they try to, like I said, sue the other person. It was like, well, you signed this agreement saying blah 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 blah, and it's like, oh wait, I didn't know that because they didn't read it. They didn't read the most important part, so they just blindly sign it.
What happens when all these folks are suddenly back in the housing market buying houses? Well, the price of all the houses is going to go up. The market's going to get worse. You see, theoretically, since the prices are so insane, no one's able to buy these houses, something was going to have to give. They were going to have to drop, something was going to happen, or all hell would have broken loose. Not now. The market would be prevented from correcting because all these people are buying houses, even though they are very far from actually being able to buy any of the houses at the prices they are at. But since they enter a 50 50 goddamn year mortgage. Oh, they bought the house. So what you see is this cycle of debt slavery. You work, you relocate to find better opportunities. All of your payments, all of your money, when you break it down, is going towards this interest. A large chunk of your money as you navigate the world today is going towards some sort of interest or debt all the time. Riddle me this. What is the cheat code? The most surefire way, the number one way to get rich? It's compound interest. This is the idea behind something like a Roth IRA, an investment account, a retirement account.
Yeah.
The idea is you have this account for something like 30 years. You continue to invest in it. You get year over year returns. You get stacked dividends. Over the course of this 30 years, you get interest.
Not only if, not only that it catches up to inflation. So let's say it made a 10% return. If inflation is 4% minus that 4, you get a 6% return. You're getting profit 6%. Compound that over 10, 20, 30 years. You're making money. You don't even need like a job. And going back to what he says about debt, it's like schools, colleges, especially colleges. Student loans, most common. I mean, most common debt. Most common, debt. Students are majoring in like, I don't know, arts, whatever, where you can just learn it online, and they're taking up so much debt, and they try to find a job, and then they're only qualified for the low end debt and jobs that they qualified before when they got the degree. Um, it's kind of like similar to the AI taking the jobs. But yes, of course, there's some careers out there, engineering, doctor, nursing, but however, the debt is still high, so I would definitely be careful of that.
Compound interest to work for you. And if it's some sort of tax exempt account, you withdraw it, you're a tax free millionaire. This is what boomers did if they knew what to do. You didn't have to be a genius, have some great business idea, work crazy hard, be great at networking, mathematics to calculate the.
That's why compound interest, eighth wonder of the world, bro. Charlie Munger. I don't wait. Oh no. I don't know. Someone said compound interest because it, if the interest is like keep taking money away for you, it would make sense to invest in something that would give you the compound interest. You know.
Perfect way to allocate your money. You get a conservative investment portfolio. You start when you're in your 20s, late 20s, when you're financially stable, you start putting more and more money into it. Then you reach your 60s, withdraw it, tax free, you win. There are boomers, Gen X that did that. That's it. That's how they retire. Tax free millionaires. That's the easiest way. That's the secret. That's the cheat code. Compound interest. This is a bank's entire business model, is interest. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. But there are a few things today that make it very much a bad thing. That's ruined all of our lives. When a bank loans you the money for something like a 30-year mortgage, where do they get it from? Do they go in the vault and count little jewels? Is it all accounted for? Is it all in some sort of reserve? Do they only lend out money that they have? No. The system of banking we have today is fractional reserve. They don't have to have. They just lend it. They lend it out. They create it out of nothing and lend it at compound interest. When you are able to charge compound interest on money that you do not have, you win. You get to a point where you own everything.
The difference between interest and compound interest is, let's say interest, you put in $100, gives you 3% interest. Eventually the $100 will be $103. Good. But then next year will be $106. You still gain 3%, $3 every year. Compound interest, however, put in $100, say 3% compound interest. Okay, you made 103. Then next year, it would do the interest on the based on the 103 now. So it may be 107 instead of 106. Because interest, they would only charge interest based on the 100 only, and then only at the 100. But the compound interest, they would charge interest on what the money is like now and what how much money is in there. And then if it changes, if let's say if it's 100 to 103, then it would charge the compound interest 3%, and then you would get like 107 or something. So
This is what always inevitably happens. People like to talk about BlackRock, these giant asset managers, State Street, Vanguard. Who owns BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard? Well, firstly, they all own each other. This is easy to see. It insists upon itself. But beneath that, listed as an insider, the number one holder of any one of these massive asset managers will be a bank. In the case of BlackRock, it's listed as an insider. Bank of America owns the majority of BlackRock. It's not some traditional loan that started BlackRock. BlackRock's not some startup of some guy just like, oh, I have an idea. I'll just create a company that like owns everything. No, it's created by great finance as an extension of itself. It all insists upon itself. So yes, banks do own everything. BlackRock is owned by a bank. State Street is owned by a bank. Vanguard is owned by a bank. What they really are is just extensions of banks. That's all they are. And we know that these massive asset managers create big problems in housing. All these investment homes are bought and they're empty. Now, technically, people are going to go, oh, BlackRock actually doesn't buy a house. Okay, jackass, they own all these other little, smaller real estate investment firms, and then they buy all the houses. Same shit. It's the same shit. Don't be a fucko. Yes, they're buying all the houses. Yes, they own everything. But who owns them? They own each other, but they're owned by banks. Banks. How do banks get this powerful? How do they own everything? Because they are able to charge compound interest, the secret to getting rich, with money they don't have. They lend out money.
it's almost like venture capitalist. It's basically that competition where like, you know, definitely based on the 40 Laws of Power. Definitely read that book. Helped me change the way I see the world. Um, when there's like competitors of another company, if the company has the money, they can just buy it out them, and then they don't have a competitor anymore because they have the money. Now, what he's talking about, they have so much money due to their interest, and then they could just buy out anything, take out their competitors.
They don't have and charge
That's why they say money is power.
compound interest on it. Now they own everything. They own everything. And you can't have anything. This is the danger of usury. It is basically genocide. Usury has little differing definitions. Some people say it's any interest at all. But in economies of scale like we have today, there has to be these institutions that can create money out of almost nothing and lend it at interest. It's kind of required. A more real definition of usury is any rate of interest which is exploitative, which is unreasonable. This can be a large flat rate, but strictly speaking, anytime interest is charged on top of interest, compound interest, this is usury, and this is criminal. So that's the first problem. Not that there are central banks that have the power to mint money and don't have these massive reserves, and they're not doling out silver coins to everybody. But it's the rates of interest, the usurious rates, which are immoral, which are unethical. The second problem is the allegiance of these banks towards the people in whatever country, nation they inhabit, which is, number one, obviously not there if you look around. Young people are enslaved by debt. They are one emergency away, specifically a medical emergency away, from complete ruin. They are so far from ever being able to own a home. Inflation is never ending. Wages aren't keeping up. You know the whole shebang. I've talked about all that stuff before. You look around, it's very clear the allegiance is not there. But not only is the proof in the pudding, there is just actual proof that central banks, like the one we have in America, the Federal Reserve, are privately owned. they're not under the wing, they're not underneath the government. And it is very clear they do not care about you. They do not want you to live a happy, prosperous life. This is evidenced by the behavior of something like BlackRock. They buy all these houses, they're empty, they don't give a fuck. They don't care if you have somewhere to live. The point is the allegiance of these institutions which create and loan money is very questionable. They don't care about you at all. They got their own thing going on. They're not beholden to the state in any way. They have their own machinations of international finance. You could even go as far to say that they hate you and want you dead. And you could look around and you could say, well, things aren't that bad.
I mean, they just care about money, you know.
If there were really these people with this incredible financial power and they wanted you dead, wouldn't things look a lot worse than they are now? And there's truth to that. The first thing is you do have to look under the surface a little bit. Not to be corny and say like bread and circus or whatever, but that's kind of true. You look under the surface, everybody's in debt. They're one emergency away from being ruined. The second thing is that we do have a lot of this technology now that sort of counters this a little bit and makes standard of living decent despite the parasitic nature of great finance today, of banking, which exists to leech off everyone and everything and has started to own the entire country. And the third thing is that you have no idea how good things could be, how good things have been in the past. You see, in any regime that exists, they benefit, it behooves them to paint the past before their great arrival, to paint everything in the past as some nightmare. But it's a lie. It's a fabricated ideological paradigm. There are multiple times in history, and I'm not just talking about the baby boomers, but hundreds of years ago, where land and houses were in the hands of almost everybody, the peasant class. Despite they don't have little standard of living things like we have today because of our technology. But other than that, the situation we find ourselves in is actually quite dismal. And if you think otherwise, no, actually that's you've been raped. Multiple times in the past where people had more ownership of their property, more leisure time, less taxes. You have no idea how good things could be with all of our technology today if we had a system.
Because back then they started with small companies. They didn't have enough capital. Now over the years, with enough of the hard work and consistency, they grow very successful now, and then they were able to use more of their capital, more of their profits into expansion. I mean,
System of banking that existed for the benefit of the people and not private interests, owned by those who represent the people, not private interests. You have no idea how good things could be. Things do not have to be like this. And this is the big problem. When you get into the nitty-gritty of economic theory, I don't know a whole lot. But people drone on and on about, oh, capitalism, oh, socialism. It's like, dude, you're missing the forest for the trees. The people who own the institutions which mint your currency, every US dollar in circulation, and loan it at interest, regulate the entire economy based on debt and usury. These people are not subject to audit. They are private interests that hate you and want you dead. That's the problem. That's the whole problem. You can drone on and on about whatever. Like, honestly,
I mean, they care about money. I mean, simple.
I don't know if this is a ridiculous thing to say, but I don't think it really I don't know if it matters that much, if it's more of a free market kind of thing or a socialist kind of thing. Basically, you just have to have the banks not owned by people that want you dead and raped. State banking, that's all it is. And every leader that's tried to do it has been murked, iced, without exception. Anyways, that's the rant. Comment below if I cooked, if you like it. Here's the thing. I'm not pessimistic about the future. I think that this shit won't fly. A lot of people are onto it. People are over it. It's gotta end. It's gotta give. There's gonna be a point in our lifetime where things start to get better. This stuff starts to reverse, and we start winning. Mark it. Write it down. They might get worse before, but it's coming. The mini golden age is coming. Run and yell it from the rooftops. Don't go around living your life thinking everything's so bad, everything's going to end, it's all over, something terrible is going to happen soon. Operate as if everything will work out in the end. Everything's working, everything's going to be good, going to turn around. This is the way you have to live your life. Because here's the thing, if things don't go that way and things do go down, you think you'll be better prepared. You think you'll be better able to handle the situation if you've been dooming all this time, but it's the exact opposite. To meet the world, to go live, to build skills, to be a person who has some pull, to be a person who has some aura, you can't be walking around with this fucko attitude. You have to operate as if everything's going as planned, and then you can become the man, and then if you're the man, then you can handle anything. And all those who are subjecting everybody to this sort of debt slavery, they're ultimately playing against God. Don't forget it, never doom. Appreciate the opportunity to be alive and give your gift fully. Peace.
I mean, very good video. I mean, definitely, like I said, don't be kind of like down about it. And I also want to add that if people realize it, if everyone realizes what they're doing, what they're seeing, what they're doing, what their mistakes of trying to fall into that trap, then there's a potential possibility that it will reverse. It's like a recession. If people knew that every recession there's like a great, when the markets go down, eventually it goes back up. If people invest their money when it's down, dude, they'll make so much money when it goes up. That's like last year, you know. Of course, I wish I learned this earlier, especially trying to get myself into debt, and now I know. Like after that, like I'll pay off the debt and then never get into that space again. And like I said, yeah. And if people, if they realize like everything, then there's a possibility. So, um, and yeah. So that's the end of the stream. I got school. Back to school. And yeah. See you guys soon.